Oh, we are live.
Yes, we are. I figure we should just
Okay.
click the button and
So you
just
just
get
click the
going.
button. And I'm first.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we build products in public. Each week, we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we share our struggles, our wins, and everything in between. I am Benedicta, and I'm feeling Halloween exhausted.
And I'm Benedict. Today is November 1st. This is episode number 191, and I'm feeling a little bit stressed. But first, congratulations on your amazing Halloween dinner.
I mean, I nailed it. I am mom of the year. No, I've been like a negative Halloween naysayer for years and years and years. It's slowly warmed up. And like last year, I did a little bit of effort, and this year I made an even larger effort, and it was great. My sister came to visit from Sweden, and we made like a Halloween themed dinner, and we had scary drinks for the kids. I mean, they were so happy. The drinks were like, just like regular, like clear soda with like candy in it, like scary candy in it. And there was even like candy on little and umbrellas and then candy on these little sticks, or actually swords that were on the glasses. And yeah, and then we went out trick and treating in our neighborhood, which it's pretty amazing. Other than it snowed and I got so cold, and I already had like almost a beginning of a cold, so I just been exhausted today and just kind of hibernated at home and took like half a day off to just catch my
To
breath
recover.
after Halloweening really hard. I don't know if that is a word,
Definitely. Yes. You can
but
definitely Halloween too hard.
yes. So check out the tweet and like hashtag sponsored by HelloFresh. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a HelloFresh inspired dinner. We had to like add to it. And my colleague at the bank job called me out on it. I was like, oh my God, look at what I made. And I showed them the picture while we were waiting for some people to join the meeting. And I got so many compliments. And then the last one who joined, he was like, yeah, I made that too. Was that HelloFresh? I'm like, oh my God.
You spoiled it.
But then he showed me the pictures of his, and I felt good again.
Did you like make it way nicer, or what happened?
Mine, like at least some of mine were standing. So they were little, for people who haven't seen the picture. They were little like bell peppers that were cut to look like pumpkin, like how you carve a pumpkin. So they were like carved
Mhm.
bell peppers, I guess, stuffed with filling. So yeah, so most of mine were like still standing, but his were like all just fallen over, and you couldn't really see their face. Yeah.
Got it. Nice.
hmm So a little win there. But why are you stressed? Maybe you work, and not create Halloween dinners.
Yeah, that's mostly the problem. I totally forgot about Halloween. So last night we had like some kids were coming over, and I was like, oh crap, I don't have anything, like no sweets or nothing. Um, but I guess they did not quite get the concept of Halloween, so they were like, okay, well that's fine, bye. So,
So no
yeah,
tricks.
no tricks, no,
No,
no.
that's good.
Um, so yeah, that was my Halloween experience yesterday. Other than that, super busy lately. We are polishing up our workflow builder. Like that's the next big feature we're going to launch, I guess. And it's becoming really nice. Like it's super solid. It's super polished at this point. Well, not super polished, but it's decently polished. And it feels very robust. Like uh, Jane was that was one of her first comments, was like, it does not feel flimsy at all, like because it just works and it doesn't break in weird ways or like have like weird UI glitches and stuff like that. So we're super happy how it turned out. And because of that, we decided to start launching it to early access customers next week. We're probably going to announce it tomorrow or today when this episode comes out. And then hopefully we get some people who are interested in using it, and we will start shipping it to those people. And then we set a public launch date for, I think it's the first week of December, where we are planning to properly launch this to everyone. But we made a deliberate choice to really like ship the bare minimum of features around this. So we have.
I had the marketing idea. Sorry, I'm breaking in. You should launch it with a workflow showcasing how you could do an advent calendar in Userlist. But then
maybe that's not a bad idea.
Maybe you have to like launch it last week of November so they can actually use it. But it could be Christmas themed that way, where you're like, anyway, that was my idea.
Not a bad idea. I keep it in mind.
12 days of Christmas. That's after Christmas, I think. Because then you could like launch it in December, and then people could have 12 days of Christmas themed, like a campaign ready to go.
Not a bad idea. I keep it in mind.
Keep it in mind.
Let's see how far we are. Like how far we get. Like we have a couple of things that we still want to add before the public launch. We also have a large list of things we want to add after the public launch to be able to like do another launch and another launch and another.
Well, then you can do a 12-day of Christmas launch with the 12-day of Christmas campaign that you created as the first marketing effort. Okay, sorry.
Maybe, yeah, something like that.
This is so much more fun than making stuff. No, just kidding. Just having ideas and then you guys implement it if you want, or even if you don't, like you can just skip it.
I mean, I appreciate it because I feel like we're so deep into work mode that we are out of ideas at this point. We're just like so much in execution mode that it's hard to take a step back and like think about stuff like that because I'm mostly worried about like shipping everything. But yeah, overall, all of that just makes the current phase super stressful. I've been not sleeping well lately. I've been working way too much. Our kitchen and our house looks like a mess because instead of cleaning up, I'm working. So yeah, overall it's stressful, but I feel like setting those deadlines is also important for us. So we actually start thinking about shipping it and not like polishing and adding, because the list of things we want to add and the things we want to do and the things that could be a cool idea is endless basically. But if we don't start setting up deadlines and dates, we just keep building and never launch. So yeah, that's why things are stressful over here.
But I think it's okay to have phases like that where you do focus and you think, okay, the house is gonna, the house and the kitchen takes second priority, and like I'm gonna focus on this. But you have to make sure it doesn't go over too long of a time period, because that's when you hit that inevitable wall in the end.
Yeah.
And also it's a time period where maybe you consciously spend a little bit more on takeout or like help around the house, or like, some things, so that when you emerge on the other side, you're not like, the house isn't too much of a mess and you haven't stopped eating, I'm just speaking from experience here.
It's not as bad, to be honest. I used to like the time every evening to cook dinner as a time to wind down, explicitly wind down, because the days have been intense. Well, yeah, it has effects on other stuff though. Like my email inbox is a mess as well. I'm neglecting a lot of emails in there. So if you've been emailing me and waiting for a reply, sorry, I'll get to it eventually, but priorities are just totally elsewhere right now. Yeah. But things are overall super exciting, because again, like it's looking good. The feature's super solid, and we've been doing a lot of refactorings in the process. So especially like on the front end stuff, we, for example, refactored our form builder to be more flexible and like be usable in more situations. We refactored all of our like pop-ups and like drop downs and all of it to properly respect the boundaries they are in. So they, when they're at the edge of the screen, they flip and resize and stuff like that. And we changed all our modals into dialogue, like native dialogue text, which was also a fun project.
Is that working well? I haven't been able to test that yet.
It's working well enough, I guess. There's still some things that I don't particularly like. Like one of them is so one of the features with the new native dialogue tags is that you can open them as a modal. So they get like rendered in a separate layer. It's called the top layer. It's not connected to anything else inside the window. And they get this backdrop that you can also style with CSS. So previously you had to come up with your own solution and stuff like that, but it's all built in. The only problem with that is that only works if you explicitly call show modal on the element node. So there's no way to just render it in the DOM and have it open as a modal. You can render it as open, but you cannot get the backdrop unless you call that method, which is a bit annoying. I feel like it would be better if there's just a modal attribute or something on the element that would trigger this. And the same thing with the popovers. There's a new API coming out with like the popover API, basically, which is very similar, which also allows you to render those like pop-ups and flyouts and stuff like that on the so-called top layer. But that also only happens when you explicitly call show popover on the element.
But so you have to open them with JavaScript? There's like no way to just give... Oh. Because I was just working on a demo for Altera, because we kind of have like a missing UI piece. We have these modals that let you log in and sign up and that kind of thing. And then we have a profile. We call them embeds that you can like drop into your interfaces. But the more kind of common UI pattern once you're logged in is to have that little image avatar of like your account image. And then you click on that, and that's where kind of your profile link is and your logout button is. So I've been working on like creating a very minified version, or like a very easy version of that people can copy. And I did that using just CSS and HTML with a toggle button. So when you toggle the button, you can check if a button is toggled by doing checked, if it's checked or not in CSS. And then if it's checked, I will open, or I will display the sibling, which is then the popover. And I haven't checked with like people who are more knowledgeable than me about like accessibility and stuff, but it was a fun exercise because it actually works pretty well. What you don't then get is, so if you click outside of the popover, you don't get that close. But I could add that with JavaScript. But I just, in my mind, assumed like the new dialogue and popover that I haven't been able to look at. I didn't know about the popover, but I've heard about the dialogue, that it would work in a similar way, like you were saying, like you could like toggle it without having to write any JavaScript.
I think there's a way with the popover API to do this, because you can define a popover target or something like that. So there's some of this open close toggle behavior built into that, but like the popover API is like super new. I think it's not supported in Firefox just yet, and it's just landed in Safari with like the latest release from like 2 weeks ago when it was released. So it's not.
I'm gonna stick to my homemade one, and then I'm gonna check with some accessibility experts on, because somebody was chiming in. I showed it on Twitter that you can do like an ARIA expanded type attribute to kind of make sure that this toggle button and the menu kind of are connected, so that it makes sense that when you toggle, you open. But other than that, it seems to work pretty well. And then I thought about adding just a little bit of JavaScript. So if you click anywhere else on the page and it's open, like we'll toggle that button again.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a fun exercise. It was fun going back to like, I don't know, just like HTML, CSS, and the basics, and just how powerful the basics actually are. And especially now with all the new CSS stuff coming out, we have like the hash
Yes.
attribute, and of course you have all the things that we've had for a while, like I said, with checked, and there's so many things that have been existing for a while. And I think I mentioned it before on the podcast, but I've learned CSS through the times by making things, and I haven't really gone deep and learned it on its own. And so much has happened since I started learning CSS until now, but I haven't kept up. So there are things that I'm like, oh, you can't do that. And then I'm seeing, these tweets. There's one guy, I think it's called Jay Hay. Jay, we'll put that link in the description. And he does these like really cool HTML, CSS demos. I'm like, oh, you can do that now. Like I remember there being talks about it, but then I haven't like looked at it so closely. So when I code myself, I'm like, oh, I'll do that in JavaScript, or like, that you can't do that in CSS. But then like, oh, it's already dropped because it's been 20 years. Like there's a lot that has happened since I did my most kind of intense CSS exploration. I would imagine that's like, it's not even it's like 30 years ago when I started learning CSS, and there's just some things that are stuck. Like I haven't kept up with the times.
Wait, 30 years? I think CSS was not invented 30 years ago.
I mean, I will turn 41, and I was 13 when I took my first HTML CSS class. So not 30, 28 then. But
I feel like when I started doing this like 2000 something like that, I think CSS did just land. I learned doing styling without CSS first, and then I added I learned like CSS was this new hot thing that came out. But I mean I might be wrong. Maybe it was just.
But you also have to remember that CSS was invented by a Norwegian guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when did CSS come out? On December 17th, 1996.
Oh, right. Nice. 26 years ago. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Fair. So not 30 then. So let's say 25.
Still a long time, yes.
Yeah, because I went to America in 98, and I had this class. It was the last class I had before going to America. So yes, so not 30, so 25 then. 98, the spring of 98 maybe, or the fall of 97.
Yeah, roughly around the same time when I started doing this. I remember I bought a book on how to build websites in 1999.
Oh, I found books. I mean, long time listener, I've been cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. I have found so many great books. I need to take photos of them. But there is one, which is the one I actually learned JavaScript from the first time around. And
Nice.
I have it, and I've saved it. And I also have one that's called, it was like a classic, like how to make killer websites or something. Like I remember it coming. It was like mind blowing. It was kind of like showing off all the tricks and things that you could do way back when. And that's where I'm stuck with CSS.
Nah, that's not true.
No, I picked up some things along the way, but it's just weird. Like some things like oh, you can't do that, and then you just kind of forget that you should go back and check and see where so thank you for reminding me about dialogue. I'll have a look at that. But unfortunately,
there's so much cool stuff happening with CSS and HTML these days. So yeah,
so much cool stuff. And I guess that brings me around to one of my notes, is that I am just so sick of this like framework nonsense that is going around. And now that I'm like in developer relations, we have to make demos for all kinds of things. And it's really hard for me to see people jumping on things that they like really don't understand and know why they're making. And then I have to learn next to demo how it should be done properly, because some of the things that are coming in, I mean, a lot of it is lack on our parts, documentation wise and stuff like that. But we serve our things through an external script, and just that fact, like that is, that's not part of the new world, right? You would download something from NPM, and some of these framework make it kind of hard. And like I've complained about before with my gray hair, is that they are removing the separation between client and server, and like I'll tell you, these senior developers are like, well, it's it's so clever, and now you can do everything in one file, and like, well, they understand it barely, but they understand. I think they understand it, but me just going into Next now, like I'm having such a hard time figuring out like what is happening in the client, what is happening on the server, and like the questions we are getting coming in, like people are confused, and it's going to be a hard challenge for us who are kind of first responders towards developers who are learning or testing out things,
Yeah.
because and it's so hard to explain when it's all muddled together, because I'm like, well, we have an external script and it gets loaded in the client or like loaded on the browser, and then they're like, why isn't it accessible on the server? And it's like, well, it's an external script, like it's not.
Yep.
You like put it as a script tag in your head, it's never gonna be on the server. So yeah, that's just me complaining a little bit and people fighting, and I'm just like, ugh, I just want to write some old HTML and CSS again. I think I finally caught the fatigue.
Yep. Can totally relate to that.
Well, you've stayed thoroughly in that side of tech where you have a separation between server and client, though. It's even two different languages.
Yes, but that's just how it is, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway,
it
that
comes
was my
with its own challenges. Like it's also not super easy, but at least the boundaries are super obvious.
And it really annoys me because I found this tweet. Somebody tweeted like a year ago or something about a paper from the 80s, I think maybe from 84, something like that, that showed how not having clear boundaries between client and server, I obviously it was a different client back then, messed up mental models and made it really hard for developers to reason. And I remember seeing that, and I remember retweeting it because I thought it was like really cool, that we always come full circle, and also that the paper was like almost my age, but I can't find it. So I've been trying to like search my own Twitter history and I can't find it. So if you, dear listener, if you know what I'm talking about, please send me this research paper, because I would love to have it now and actually read it in full to help formulate some of my own thoughts around this.
Yeah, totally agree. I remember this weird phase where I think it was shortly before I started working with Ruby on Rails. I was exploring a couple of other frameworks, and there was this weird phase where people thought it would be fun to make HTTP requests stateful by like having like a session object on it. But that's not like just a session ID with a user ID, but like the proper application state serialized in a session. So every single request would be dependent on the current state that was shared
of the whole application.
Of the whole application. And it sounded like super clever back then, but it was a nightmare to work with because you would visit a page, and depending on the state you were in, like last week, it would look totally different. I feel like, we're making stupid mistakes over and over again.
Well, the thing is, like, and let's not talk about the world, but the world is also making some of its same mistakes over and over again. And it feels like it's it's the nature of humans or whatever. Like you want to like fix this problem that you seem or you deem a problem. And I have these conversations a lot with Lillian about things that you should just like let be. She will come up with like, well, that's stupid, we should optimize, or we should fix this. And I'm like, yes, but maybe also it's like, maybe it's as good as it should be. Like it being, I don't know, I can't remember an example, but just like imagine you're like walking to the bus. It's like, oh, it would be faster if we could like teleport to the bus, or like maybe we should like, and she'll come up with crazy ideas about how we can get to the bus faster. But then it's like, okay, if we remove the walk, which we kind of have done with scooters, if you remove the walk from home to the bus, like you remove the little exercise that is left in a modern life.
Yeah.
And these scooters, which I love in practice, but I hate in theory, these scooters you can rent in towns now, it has turned out, and they've started looking at it, that they actually lower, the health or like the exercise level of the population, because you are then taking away that like little friction of walking to the bus. So I have these conversations with Lynn a lot, because she's a problem solver. She's like, let's fix this. And it's like, well, and also there's so many edge cases, trying to like help her think about edge cases. And she's like, well, we can do so. And I'm like, well, if you're going to make a rule for, it's often rules. If you want to make a rule for all of that, like it defeats the whole, like it's not fun anymore. It's like it ruins the thing by doing all of these things. But it's a very like human thing. So if you're sitting there and you have like a front end problem and you're like, what if I could just do like that would be clever, and then we do it and then we realize like this is chaos, mental models are gone, it's going to be super hard to maintain, and then we stop and like we go back, or we like figure out something new that turns out to be where we were 10 years ago, and we end up going in these cycles. And I think it's really hard for it not to happen, but it's also annoying to be grown enough to see it happen and like no. And sometimes us older people get proved wrong. Like maybe this time, like this version or this thing will actually be a lot better. But then oftentimes it's just like, yeah, we told you it was never gonna be good. Like this is not the right mental model or the right. Anyway, so it's gonna be interesting to see where we are in 2-3 years in the world of React, especially where who even owns React anymore, or who's responsible for React, which is kind of the world I'm in. Yeah, excited to like play around a little bit more with just vanilla JS and HTML and CSS and see how far that can take us, especially for simpler apps. Yeah. So this is what I'm bringing to Mixpod. First live stream on Saturday. It's Saturday, 11 o'clock. Nice. Saturday, 11 o'clock CET. So if you're European, do watch us and have your brunch.
Nice. So it's happening. What are you starting with? Just planning?
So first episode, we call it episode 0. We're going to plan the app. So my idea is that we'll use TL Draw and just kind of draw out everything that needs to be in place for this app to come to fruition, and then start planning in what order we should do it. I often like to test some of the hardest, or some of the things I'm unsure about. I like to kind of test, can I make this search API that I found work so that you can search for podcasts? Like if you can't do that, like a lot of the app kind of falls apart. So we're just going to plan out in what order we're going to do that. And then we're going to slot that into kind of the episodes going forward. And we're thinking about having 6 streams at least. So that would be 12 weeks, because we're doing them every other week. And then we'll do them like thematically. And then I'm also hoping that this kind of, the drawing we're making, the diagram we're making, that can be like something that we go back to through all of the streams to be like, okay, now we're working on this piece. And then we can make notes. If like something comes up, we can make a note of that on like something we're going to make in the future, like take a note and like have this be a living document that we can share with people to follow along and see kind of where we're headed. And I mean, with this app, like we could definitely hit a hurdle where it's like we can't make it. Like, and you want to know those things sooner rather than later. So we're just going to go ahead. We don't have any kind of like, or we have one official sponsor, which is Outsera, the company I work for. So we're going to be, one of the first episodes will obviously be to create a landing page to capture emails. So we're going to make just a regular old HTML form, and we're going to post it. And then you're going to get a response back on a HTML page, and just try to just do it the old-fashioned way. And then we're just going to take it from there. We have some very cool meetings lined up that I can't share yet, but maybe we get some cool sponsors. And if we don't, like, we're just going to do this anyway, because I realize I just want to stream. I want to create stuff. I want to spread some joy around web again, and like not like think content, but just like have fun. creating stuff.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
excited
I'm
to see where
excited.
this
I
is
am
going.
excited. I am excited. I am excited. If we can get like at least some people watching, that would be nice. Yeah. And also one of the persons we streamed with back in the day, in 2020s, back in those days,
Mhm.
she reached out on LinkedIn and she was like, "Oh, could I come like join your streams again?" And so we had a meeting with her yesterday. So she's gonna be coming and kind of being like a little, not the outsider because she's going to be part of the gang, but like she won't be part of all the work that goes into the app between the streams, so she can kind of like ask the questions that we forget to ask ourselves or like share because we are too into it. So she's going to join and then have an eye on the chat, and also kind of like have questions prepared and like ask us about things so that we share things that other people who are outside the project would probably want to ask.
Makes sense. Nice.
It's all coming together very nicely.
Very cool. That's super nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. It's just a lot of work.
I know. Life is a lot of work.
Yes.
Last weekend, I went to the cabin to close it up and had to clean 2 sewage pumps. So,
Lovely.
lovely. I mean, it wasn't as bad as it sounds. It sounds much worse, but it was just, a very
Yeah.
like
A very adult thing to do.
very adult thing to do. A very, things need maintenance. Like houses need maintenance, software need maintenance. You
Yes.
kind of, if you put things out there, you have to keep it up as well.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's it. I actually have to run, so we better wrap it.
And make sure you sleep well. Have you gotten your sun lamp?
I have not set up the sun lamp, but so far so good. Like
So far, so good.
Not depressed yet.
Good. That's all I need to hear.
Yeah, all good. So, well, have a nice week and see you
you.
around the interwebs.
Interwebs. Bye-bye.
Bye.